Life is shorter than you think, and why that's actually good news. Picture this, you're sitting in bumper-to-bumper traffic on the FDR Drive in Manhattan, watching the minutes tick by on your dashboard clock. You left work at 6 p.m. and now it's 7:30 and you're still nowhere near home. Your phone buzzes with another work email, your dinner is getting cold, and you can feel that familiar knot of frustration building in your chest. Sound familiar? Here's what hit me during one of those exact moments last year. I realized I'd been stuck in traffic like this hundreds of times before, and I'd probably be stuck hundreds more times in the future. But here's the thing that really got to me, I had no idea how many more times. None of us do. Life is shorter than we think. Way shorter. And if you're anything like most people, that thought probably makes you feel a little uncomfortable right now. But stick with me, because I'm about to share why this realization, as scary as it might seem, is actually the best news you'll hear today. See, there's this ancient practice that's been helping people find peace and purpose for over 2,000 years. It's called MEMENTO MORI, which is Latin for remember you are mortal. Now, before you click away thinking this is going to be some morbid, depressing lecture, let me tell you what MEMENTO MORI really is. It's the ultimate wake-up call that helps you stop wasting your life on things that don't matter. Think about how we actually spend our days. We stress about traffic jams, get worked up over social media comments, lose sleep over what our coworkers think about our presentation, or spend hours scrolling through our phones watching other people live their lives. Meanwhile, the clock keeps ticking and our actual life, the one we're supposed to be living, passes us by. There's this incredible painting from 1671 by Philippe de Champagne that captures the essence of Memento Mori perfectly. In it, you see three simple objects that tell the whole story of human existence. First, there's an hourglass, sand falling grain by grain, just like the seconds of our lives slipping away, whether we're paying attention or not. Then there's a rose, beautiful and vibrant, but already starting to wilt at the edges, reminding us that everything that blooms must eventually fade. And finally, there's a skull, the ultimate reminder that death comes for all of us, no exceptions. Now, I know what you're thinking. This doesn't sound like good news at all. But here's where it gets interesting. When you really, truly accept that your time is limited, not in some abstract, theoretical way, but in a real, visceral way, something amazing happens. You start making different choices. Remember the traffic jam I mentioned? After my Memento Mori wake-up call, I started using that time differently. Instead of rage texting my friends about how much I hate the FDR Drive, I started calling my mom. Instead of letting road rage ruin my evening, I began practicing gratitude for having a car, a job to drive home from, and a warm apartment waiting for me. The traffic didn't change, but I did. The ancient Stoics understood something we've largely forgotten in our modern world. Thinking about death isn't morbid, it's liberating. When you remember that your days are numbered, you stop sweating the small stuff because you realize how small it really is. You stop procrastinating on the things that matter because you understand that someday might never come. You stop taking the people you love for granted because you know that every conversation could be your last. This isn't about becoming obsessed with death or walking around in a constant state of existential dread. It's about using the reality of mortality as a compass to guide you toward what truly matters. It's about recognizing that the very thing we're all trying not to think about, the fact that our time here is limited, is exactly what gives our time here meaning. But knowing life is short is just the beginning. The real question is, what would you actually do if you knew you only had one day left? And more importantly, what does that answer tell you about how you should be living right now? 1. What Marcus Aurelius would do if he had one day left. Let me tell you about Sarah, a venture capitalist in Palo Alto who thought she had all the time in the world. At 34, she was crushing it, managing $100 million fund. living in a stunning penthouse overlooking San Francisco Bay, and working 16-hour days because she believed success meant sacrificing everything else. Then came the phone call that changed everything. "Ms. Chun, we need you to come in for additional tests." Those 9 words from her doctor made Sarah's perfectly planned world suddenly feel very fragile. Sitting in that sterile waiting room, clutching her phone with 17 unread work emails, she asked herself a question she'd never seriously considered. If I only had 1 day left, what would I actually do? This exact scenario, facing your own mortality head-on, is something the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius thought about every single day. Not because he was morbid or depressed, but because he understood something most of us miss. The awareness of death is the secret to living fully. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his personal journal, which we now call Meditations, these powerful words: "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Think about that for a second. The most powerful man in the ancient world, someone who literally had armies at his command and unlimited resources, spent time every morning reminding himself that he could die at any moment. Why? Because he knew this awareness would guide him toward what truly mattered. So, what would Marcus Aurelius actually do if he had 1 day left? Based on his writings and philosophy, I can tell you with certainty it wouldn't involve checking his email, scrolling through social media, or worrying about what people thought of his latest policy decisions. Instead, he'd focus on 3 things: virtue, relationships, and acceptance. First, virtue. Marcus believed that the only thing truly under our control is our character, how we choose to respond to whatever life throws at us. If he had 1 day left, he'd spend it being the best version of himself possible. He'd be patient with difficult people, generous with his time and resources, courageous in the face of fear, and just in all his dealings. Not because he was trying to earn some cosmic reward, but because virtue is its own reward. Second, relationships. Marcus would express his love and gratitude to the people who mattered most. He'd tell his wife Faustina how much she meant to him, spend meaningful time with his children, and make sure his closest friends knew how much he valued their friendship. He wouldn't assume there would be another chance to say these things because he understood that assumption is what keeps most of us from saying them at all. Third, acceptance. Marcus would face his final day with the same calm dignity he brought to every challenge in his life. He wouldn't rage against the unfairness of it or spend precious hours in denial. He'd accept death as he accepted everything else, as part of the natural order of things, no more tragic than the setting of the sun or the changing of the seasons. Now, here's where this gets really practical for those of us who aren't Roman emperors. Sarah, sitting in that doctor's office, realized she'd been living like someone who had unlimited time. She'd been putting off calling her parents in Taiwan because work was too busy. She'd been postponing the novel she wanted to write because she'd get to it someday. She'd been avoiding difficult conversations with friends because there would always be a better time. The test results came back benign. Sarah was fine. But the scare had already done its work. She started living like someone who understood that today might be her last day. Not in a reckless, quit your job and move to Bali kind of way, but in a purposeful, intentional way that honored the preciousness of time. She began calling her parents every Sunday, not just texting. She started writing for 30 minutes every morning before checking her phone. She had that difficult conversation with her business partner about their company's direction. She told her college roommate, who'd been struggling with depression, exactly how much their friendship meant to her. This is the real power of memento mori. It's the ultimate cure for procrastination. Think about it. Procrastination only exists when we believe we have an abundance of time. When we truly accept that our time is limited, suddenly later becomes now. That difficult conversation you've been avoiding, have it today. That creative project you've been putting off, start it this weekend. That person you've been meaning to call, pick up the phone right now. Marcus Aurelius knew that death gives life urgency, and urgency gives life meaning. When you live like someone who understands that your days are numbered, every day becomes more vivid, more intentional, more alive. You stop wasting energy on petty office politics because you realize how petty they really are. You stop scrolling mindlessly through social media because you recognize you're literally trading minutes of your life for nothing of value. But here's what's really beautiful about this approach. When you start living like someone who might not have tomorrow, you actually enjoy today more. Food tastes better when you're not eating it while checking email. Conversations are richer when you're fully present instead of thinking about your next meeting. Even simple moments, like watching the sunset from your apartment window or feeling the warm water in your morning shower, become more meaningful when you remember they're not guaranteed. Sarah's story isn't unique. All across America, people are having their own versions of that doctor's office moment. The divorce papers that arrive unexpectedly, the phone call about a parent's health, the company layoffs that make you question everything. These moments are gifts even though they don't feel like it at the time. They're reminders that the life you're living right now is the only one you're guaranteed to have. Taking action is crucial, but there's something even more fundamental that stops most people from living fully. They're terrified of the very thing that should motivate them. 2. Why you're scared of death and how ancient Greeks fixed it. Dr. Jennifer Martinez has been a therapist in downtown Chicago for 15 years, and she's noticed something interesting. Almost every client who walks through her door is dealing with some form of death anxiety, even when they don't realize it. The workaholic who can't stop checking emails at midnight? He's terrified that slowing down means wasting his limited time. The perfectionist who has panic attacks before presentations? She's afraid that failure somehow brings her closer to meaninglessness, which feels like a kind of death. The person who can't commit to relationships? They're protecting themselves from the inevitable pain of loss. Most people think they're afraid of death, Dr. Martinez tells her clients, but what they're really afraid of are the stories they've told themselves about what death means. This insight isn't new, it's actually over 2,000 years old. A Greek philosopher named Epictetus, who understood fear better than almost anyone because he'd lived through slavery and physical disability, said something that completely revolutionizes how we think about death anxiety. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the principles and notions which they form concerning things. Death, for instance, is not terrible, else it would have appeared so to Socrates. But the terror consists in our notion of death that it is terrible. Let me break this down because it's absolutely life-changing when you really get it. Epictetus is saying that death itself isn't what scares us, it's our thoughts about death that create the fear. Think about it. Has death ever actually hurt you? No, because if it had, you wouldn't be here reading this. What hurts us is the story we tell ourselves about what death means. Take Marcus, one of Dr. Martinez's clients. He's a 28-year-old software developer who started having panic attacks after his grandfather died. I keep thinking about how everything I'm building at work is pointless because I'm just going to die anyway, he told her during their first session. What's the point of writing code or building relationships or even getting out of bed if it's all going to end? Dr. Martinez recognized this immediately. Marcus wasn't afraid of death, he was afraid of meaninglessness. He created a story that death equals pointlessness, and that story was paralyzing him. But here's what's fascinating. His grandfather, who'd lived through the Great Depression and World War II, had never seemed bothered by mortality at all. In fact, he'd been one of the most vibrant, engaged people Marcus knew, right up until the end. The difference? His grandfather had developed what the ancient Greeks called ataraxia, a kind of unshakable inner peace that comes from accepting reality as it is rather than fighting against it. He didn't spend his energy trying to avoid the inevitable, he spent it living fully within the inevitable. This is where the ancient Greeks were absolute geniuses. They understood that our fear of death usually comes from one of three false beliefs, and they developed practical ways to address each one. The first false belief is that death is evil or unnatural. We've been conditioned to think of death as the ultimate enemy, something to be fought against at all costs. But the Greeks, especially the Stoics, saw death as completely natural, no different from birth, growth, or any other part of the life cycle. When you really think about it, death is literally the most natural thing in the universe. Every star dies, every tree dies, every animal dies. We're not exempt from nature's laws, and expecting to be exempt is what creates suffering. The second false belief is that death means our lives were meaningless. This is the trap Marcus fell into. But consider this, does the fact that a beautiful sunset only lasts for minutes make it meaningless? Does the fact that a great song eventually ends make it pointless? The temporary nature of something doesn't diminish its value, it actually increases it. The Greeks understood that mortality gives life its preciousness. The third false belief is that we can somehow avoid death by not thinking about it. This is probably the most common one in our culture. We've created an entire society designed to help us avoid confronting mortality. We hide death in hospitals and funeral homes, we use euphemisms like passed away instead of died, and we spend billions of dollars on anti-aging products that promise to help us cheat time. But here's what the Greeks discovered. Avoiding thoughts of death doesn't make you less afraid of it, it makes you more afraid. It's like being afraid of the dark and dealing with it by never turning on the lights. The fear grows in the shadows. Socrates, whom Epictetus mentioned in his quote, proved this beautifully. When he was sentenced to death by the Athenian court, his friends expected him to be devastated. Instead, he spent his final hours in philosophical discussion, completely at peace. Why? Because he'd spent his entire life thinking about death, examining it, and coming to terms with it. When the moment came, he wasn't facing an unknown terror, he was facing an old, familiar thought. Dr. Martinez uses a modern version of this ancient wisdom with her clients. She has them do something called death meditation, not to become morbid or depressed, but to become familiar with the reality they're avoiding. When you stop running from the thought of death, she explains, you discover it's not actually chasing you. It's just there, neutral and natural, like gravity or the weather. She worked with Marcus to examine his beliefs about death. What if, she asked him, instead of death making life meaningless, death is exactly what gives life meaning? What if the fact that you only have a limited time to write code, build relationships, and get out of bed is precisely what makes those activities precious? This reframe changed everything for Marcus. He realized that his grandfather hadn't been ignoring death, he'd been dancing with it. Every day was meaningful because it was finite. Every relationship was precious because it wouldn't last forever. Every moment of joy was worth savoring because there would only be so many of them. The Greeks had a word for this transformation, memento mori, remember you must die. But they didn't mean it as a threat or a source of anxiety. They meant it as a liberation. When you truly accept that you're going to die, you stop wasting energy on the impossible task of avoiding death and start putting that energy into the very possible task of living fully. Think about the last time you were really, truly happy. I'm willing to bet it wasn't when you were scrolling through your phone or sitting in a boring meeting or worrying about something that might happen next week. It was probably when you were fully present in a moment, laughing with friends, watching a beautiful sunset, or feeling deeply connected to someone you love. These moments of aliveness happen when we stop trying to control the uncontrollable and start appreciating what's actually here. The ancient Greeks figured out something we're still learning. The goal isn't to stop being afraid of death. The goal is to recognize that death is not your enemy, it's your teacher. It teaches you to prioritize. It teaches you to be present. It teaches you to love deeply while you can. It teaches you that every ordinary day is actually an extraordinary gift. Marcus learned this lesson and his panic attack stopped. Not because he stopped thinking about death, but because he started thinking about it differently. He began each day with a simple reminder, I could die today, and that's okay. What matters is how I choose to live today. Once we stop fearing our own death, we face an even harder challenge, preparing for the death of people we love. 3. How to say goodbye before it's too late. Maria Rodriguez never thought she'd be having this conversation with her 78-year-old father while sitting in a Starbucks in downtown Los Angeles. But there they were, 2 cups of coffee growing cold between them, talking about his will, his wishes, and what would happen when he was gone. 6 months earlier, this conversation would have been impossible, too scary, too final, too real. But everything changed the day her father had his first heart attack. Mija, he said, reaching across the small table to squeeze her hand, I need to tell you some things while I still can. Maria's story is playing out in families across America right now. We live in a culture that's incredibly uncomfortable with loss, so we avoid these conversations until crisis forces them on us. But the ancient Stoics understood something we've forgotten. Preparing for loss isn't morbid, it's one of the most loving things you can do. The reality is brutal but undeniable. We will lose the people we love. Sometimes it happens gradually, giving us time to prepare. Sometimes it happens suddenly in car accidents or heart attacks or any of the 1,000 ways life can change in an instant. Sometimes it happens in ways that feel especially cruel through illness, violence, or circumstances that make us question everything we thought we knew about fairness. Just look around the world right now. Turn on the news any day of the week and you'll see the reality of loss everywhere. Families torn apart by natural disasters, communities grieving mass tragedies, children losing parents to disease, parents burying children who should have outlived them. Death isn't an abstract philosophical concept, it's woven into the fabric of human experience. Marcus Aurelius knew this intimately. He lost multiple children during his lifetime, lived through a devastating plague that killed millions across the Roman Empire, and watched friends and family members die in ways that would break most people. Yet he developed a philosophy that allowed him to function, to lead, and even to find peace in the midst of overwhelming loss. The key was preparation. Not the kind of preparation that involves making funeral arrangements or writing wills, though those matter too. The kind of preparation that involves fundamentally changing how we think about attachment and loss. Most of us love in a way that's unconsciously desperate. We cling to people as if our love could somehow protect them from mortality. We avoid talking about death because we believe that not mentioning it will somehow keep it away. We make plans that assume our loved ones will always be there, and when they're not, we feel betrayed by a universe that never actually promised us forever. But there's another way to love, one that the Stoics called loving with open hands. This doesn't mean loving less deeply. It means loving with full awareness that the person you're loving is mortal, just like you are. It means treasuring them precisely because your time together is limited. Maria learned this the hard way. Before her father's heart attack, she'd been putting off difficult conversations for years. She'd never told him how much his sacrifices meant to her growing up, how his work ethic had shaped her own success, or how proud she was to be his daughter. She'd been saving these conversations for the right time, not realizing that the right time is always now. After his heart attack, everything shifted. Instead of pretending he'd live forever, they started talking about his mortality openly. And something beautiful happened. Instead of making their relationship sadder, it made it richer. Every conversation became more meaningful because they both knew it might be among their last. Every shared meal, every phone call, every "I love you" carried the weight of its own preciousness. This is what the Stoics understood about grief. It's not the enemy of love, it's love's natural companion. The depth of our grief reflects the depth of our love, and trying to avoid grief by avoiding attachment is like trying to avoid getting wet by never going near water. You might succeed, but you'll miss out on the ocean. The goal isn't to stop feeling grief when we lose someone. The goal is to be prepared for grief so that when it comes, and it will come, we can honor it without being destroyed by it. We can be sad without being surprised. We can mourn without being bitter. We can miss someone deeply while still being functional human beings who can help others through their own losses. This preparation starts with honest conversations. Tell the people you love how much they mean to you, not just on special occasions, but on ordinary Tuesday afternoons. Share memories that matter. Ask them about their lives, their hopes, their fears. Don't wait for deathbed revelations. Have living room conversations while everyone's healthy and present. It also means accepting the reality that love and loss are inseparable. Every relationship you enter comes with the guarantee that it will end, either through death or other circumstances. This isn't a reason to avoid relationships, it's a reason to make them count. When you truly accept that your time with someone is limited, you stop wasting it on petty arguments and start investing it in connection. Maria's father lived for 2 more years after that first heart attack. 2 years of deeper conversations, shared stories, and expressed gratitude that might never have happened if they'd continued pretending he'd live forever. When he finally died, Maria was devastated, but she wasn't unprepared. She grieved deeply, but she also felt profound gratitude for the time they'd had and the conversations they'd shared. The Stoics had a practice called negative visualization, imagining the loss of things and people you value. This wasn't meant to make them paranoid or depressed, but to help them appreciate what they had while they had it. When you regularly imagine your spouse not being there, you stop taking their presence for granted. When you consider that today might be the last time you see your parents, you pay more attention to the conversation. This practice transforms how you show up in relationships. You become more patient with your partner's quirks because you remember they won't be there forever. You call your friends more often because you know that someday you won't be able to. You hug your children a little longer because you understand that these moments of physical closeness are numbered. Understanding loss is crucial, but memento mori isn't just about preparing for tragedy. The most powerful part is how it transforms your everyday life, starting with the first 5 minutes of your morning. 4. The 5-minute morning practice that changes everything. Imagine waking up one morning, sunlight streaming through your bedroom window, and instead of reaching for your phone to check emails or social media, you pause. You take a deep breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and you remember today is a gift. You have one precious day to make a difference, to connect with loved ones, and to live your values fully. This is the essence of a transformative morning practice, and it only takes 5 minutes. In our fast-paced, distraction-filled lives, mornings often become a blur of rushing and multitasking. We wake up, scroll through our phones, grab a cup of coffee, and jump into the chaos of the day without pausing to reflect on what truly matters. But what if you could change that? What if you could start each day with intention and clarity, using just 5 minutes to set the tone for a meaningful day ahead? This is where the Stoic practice of memento mori, remembering that you are mortal, meets a daily routine that can alter your mindset profoundly. Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca understood the importance of starting the day with a clear mind and a focused heart. They believed that by reflecting on mortality, we could cultivate gratitude and purpose, making the most of our limited time on Earth. Let's break down a simple yet powerful 5-minute morning routine that incorporates these Stoic principles. This routine will help you embrace the day with intention, prioritize what matters, and ultimately live a more fulfilling life. Minute 1: Acknowledgement of mortality. Begin your morning by acknowledging the reality of your mortality. This might sound grim, but it's actually liberating. Set a timer for 1 minute, close your eyes, and take a few deep breaths. As you breathe in, think about the fact that today could be your last. This isn't meant to induce fear or anxiety. Rather, it's a reminder to appreciate the gift of life. Marcus Aurelius famously wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Use this minute to internalize the idea that life is fleeting. By doing so, you'll cultivate a sense of urgency that can propel you to act on what truly matters. Minute 2: Gratitude reflection. Transition into a minute of gratitude. Reflect on at least 3 things you are thankful for in your life right now. These can be simple things like the warmth of your bed, the presence of loved ones, or opportunities at work. As you mentally list these things, allow yourself to feel the gratitude fully. Research has shown that practicing gratitude can significantly improve your mood and overall outlook on life. The Stoics believed that gratitude is essential for contentment and happiness. By starting your day with a focus on what you appreciate, you set a positive tone for the hours ahead. Minute 3: Intentional living. Next, set your intentions for the day. Ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish today? Think about both personal and professional goals. This could involve completing a work project, reaching out to a friend, or simply being more present with your family. Marcus Aurelius also emphasized the importance of living according to your values. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." By clarifying your intentions, you are consciously choosing to direct your thoughts and actions toward what aligns with your values. Minute 4: Visualize your day. Now visualize your day ahead. Take a moment to picture yourself going through your tasks and interactions. Imagine yourself responding calmly to challenges, showing kindness to others, and making choices that reflect your intentions. This visualization technique is powerful because it prepares your mind for the day's events. It allows you to mentally rehearse how you want to react to potential obstacles. The Stoics believed that proper preparation is key to maintaining composure and virtue in the face of adversity. Minute 5: Affirmation of control. Finally, conclude your 5 minutes with a powerful affirmation of control. Remind yourself of the things you can control and the things you cannot. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that the only things truly within our control are our thoughts, intentions, and reactions. Everything else, external circumstances, other people's opinions, and even our health, are outside our control. Take a deep breath and say to yourself, "I will focus on what I can control today and let go of the rest." This affirmation will empower you to navigate the day with resilience and clarity, regardless of the challenges you may face. Putting it all together. This simple 5-minute routine is more than just a morning ritual. It is a practice grounded in ancient Stoic wisdom. By dedicating just 5 minutes each morning to reflect on your mortality, express gratitude, set intentions, visualize your day, and affirm your control, you are actively shaping your mindset for success. But the benefits extend beyond the morning. When you consistently practice this routine, you'll find that it changes your entire outlook on life. You become more present, more engaged, and more appreciative of the little moments that make life beautiful. You stop taking your loved ones for granted and start investing time in relationships that matter. Consider the story of James, a busy executive in New York City. Before adopting this 5-minute routine, he often felt overwhelmed and disconnected from his family. He was so focused on meeting deadlines that he barely noticed the little joys in life. After committing to this morning practice, he noticed a dramatic shift. He became more patient with his children, more appreciative of his partner, and more balanced in his work-life dynamic. James found that he was more productive at work, but he was also happier at home. He made a point to have meaningful conversations with his children during breakfast, and he felt more connected to his partner during their evening walks. The practice of memento mori helped him prioritize what truly mattered in his life. Incorporating this 5-minute morning ritual into your daily routine can be a game changer. It fosters a mindset of gratitude and purpose that can ripple through every aspect of your life. You begin to realize that life is not just a series of tasks to complete. It's a precious journey filled with opportunities for joy, connection, and growth. Remember, the goal is not perfection but progress. As you start this practice, be gentle with yourself. Some days will be easier than others, and that's okay. What matters is the commitment to showing up for yourself each morning, ready to embrace the day with intention and clarity. So tomorrow morning, when you wake up, resist the urge to dive straight into your phone or your to-do list. Instead, take 5 minutes to acknowledge your mortality, reflect on gratitude, set your intentions, visualize your day, and affirm your control. Watch as these small moments of mindfulness transform your life, one day at a time. 5. How remembering death makes you fearless. Real stories. Captain Mike Thompson has run into burning buildings over 200 times in his 15-year career with the Denver Fire Department. But it wasn't always this way. Early in his career, Mike struggled with fear, not just the normal, healthy fear that keeps firefighters alive, but paralyzing anxiety that made him second-guess every decision. The turning point came during a particularly dangerous warehouse fire when his captain pulled him aside and shared something unexpected. "Thompson, you're thinking about this all wrong. You're afraid of dying, but you're already dead." That conversation changed everything for Mike, and it illustrates a profound truth that the ancient Stoics understood. When you truly accept death as inevitable, you become liberated from the smaller fears that hold most people back. Think about it logically. What's the worst thing that can happen to you in any situation? You die. And since you're going to die anyway, whether it's today, next year, or in 50 years, that ultimate fear loses its power over you. This isn't reckless thinking. It's incredibly liberating thinking that allows you to take meaningful risks and live courageously. The Stoics called this concept preferred indifference. Death is neither good nor bad, it simply is. It's going to happen regardless of how much we worry about it, so why let the fear of it prevent us from living fully? This philosophy transformed ordinary people into extraordinary leaders, thinkers, and heroes throughout history. Consider Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who became legendary for his unwavering principles. When Julius Caesar was consolidating power and it became clear that Cato would either have to compromise his values or face death, he chose death without hesitation. But here's what's remarkable: this wasn't a moment of despair or defeat. Cato spent his final evening calmly reading Plato's dialogue on the immortality of the soul, then took his own life rather than live under tyranny. His acceptance of mortality gave him the courage to die for his principles, which ironically made him immortal in the minds of those who valued freedom. Marcus Aurelius demonstrated the same fearless approach during the Antonine Plague, which killed millions across the Roman Empire. While others fled Rome, Marcus stayed to lead his people through the crisis. He wrote in his Meditations, "Don't look down on death, but welcome it. It too is one of the things required by nature." His acceptance of death, his own and others, allowed him to make difficult decisions without being paralyzed by fear of the consequences. But you don't have to be a Roman emperor or a firefighter to benefit from this mindset. Let me tell you about Sarah Chin, an entrepreneur in Atlanta who was terrified of failure. For years, she had a brilliant business idea for a sustainable packaging company, but she was paralyzed by what-if scenarios. What if she lost her savings? What if people laughed at her? What if she failed publicly? Everything changed when Sarah's grandmother, who had survived the Cultural Revolution in China, shared her perspective on fear. "Child," she said, "I watch people die for having the wrong book in their house. I saw families destroyed for speaking their minds. You're afraid of business failure? The worst thing that happens is you start over. In my country, the worst thing that happened was you disappeared forever." Sarah realized she'd been treating business failure like a death sentence when it was really just a learning experience. She started her company the next month. When investors rejected her initial pitch, she refined it. When her first product didn't sell well, she improved it. When competitors emerged, she innovated faster. Her business now employs 30 people and has prevented millions of pounds of waste from entering landfills. The key insight is this: when you accept that death is inevitable, everything else becomes manageable. Public speaking anxiety? The worst that happens is you embarrass yourself, which won't kill you. Asking someone on a date? Rejection is uncomfortable but not fatal. Starting a business? Failure means learning, not dying. This principle applies to everyday courage as well. Dr. James Wilson, a physician in Chicago, used to avoid difficult conversations with patients about their prognosis. He was afraid of causing distress, afraid of being wrong, afraid of confronting mortality directly. But after attending a conference on death acceptance, he realized his fear was actually causing more harm than good. Patients deserved honest information to make informed decisions about their remaining time. Dr. Wilson began having frank conversations about death with his terminally ill patients. Initially, he was terrified. But something remarkable happened. Patients thanked him. They felt respected, empowered, and less alone. By accepting death as natural and inevitable, Dr. Wilson became a better doctor and a more compassionate human being. His patients made better decisions about their care, spent more meaningful time with loved ones, and faced their final days with greater peace. The courage that comes from accepting mortality isn't reckless, it's calculated and purposeful. Mike Thompson, the firefighter, doesn't run into burning buildings because he wants to die. He runs in because he's accepted that death is possible and decided that saving lives is worth that risk. His acceptance of mortality makes him more effective, not more careless. This mindset transformation happens in 3 stages. First, you intellectually accept that death is inevitable not just for other people, but for you personally. Second, you emotionally process what this means, often through meditation, reflection, or meaningful conversations. Third, you begin living differently, taking risks that align with your values rather than avoiding all risks out of fear. The practical applications are endless. That difficult conversation with your boss about a promotion? Have it. The creative project you've been putting off because you might fail? Start it. The relationship that scares you because you might get hurt? Pursue it. The career change that feels risky? Consider it seriously. Remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's action in the presence of fear. When you truly accept mortality, you realize that the temporary discomfort of fear is nothing compared to the permanent regret of not trying. You understand that the worst thing isn't dying, it's dying without having really lived. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." This wisdom, tested by firefighters, entrepreneurs, doctors, and countless others, remains as relevant today as it was 2,000 years ago. This courage that comes from remembering death reveals the deepest truth about what it means to be fully alive. The one thing death teaches us about living. As we reach the end of our journey through the profound teachings of Memento Mori, let's take a moment to reflect on the one irrefutable truth that emerges from our exploration of mortality. It is not death itself that defines our lives, but how we choose to live in the face of it. This fundamental realization has the power to transform our existence, infusing it with meaning, purpose, and urgency. Throughout history, wise thinkers and philosophers have emphasized the importance of recognizing our mortality. The Stoics, in particular, understood that the awareness of death is not meant to invoke fear, but rather to inspire us to live more fully. Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor and philosopher, reminds us that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. When we embrace the inevitability of death, we are compelled to prioritize what truly matters and to let go of the trivial distractions that often consume our time. Take a moment to think about your own life. How often do you find yourself caught up in the mundane details, stressing over small inconveniences, or procrastinating on important tasks? Now, imagine if today were your last day. What would you do differently? Would you reach out to that friend you've been meaning to call? Would you spend more time with your family, expressing your love and appreciation? Would you pursue that passion you've kept on the back burner? The beauty of Memento Mori lies in its ability to guide us toward a more intentional existence. When we acknowledge that our time is limited, we become more present, more grateful, and more willing to take risks that align with our values. We learn to appreciate the fleeting moments of joy, connection, and love that fill our days, rather than waiting for a future that may never come. The stories we've shared, from Captain Mike Thompson's fearless approach to firefighting to Sarah Chen's entrepreneurial journey, demonstrate how embracing mortality can lead to profound transformations. These individuals didn't let the fear of death paralyze them. Instead, they used it as a catalyst for action, courage, and meaningful living. They remind us that when we confront the reality of our mortality, we unlock a deeper appreciation for life itself. As we conclude this exploration of Stoic wisdom and the lessons of Memento Mori, I invite you to reflect on the insights gained. Let the awareness of death inspire you to live with intention and authenticity. Make a conscious effort to express your love, pursue your passions, and engage fully with the world around you. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Stoic philosophy. If you found value in these teachings, I encourage you to subscribe to the Stoic Vivu channel for more content that makes ancient wisdom accessible and practical for modern life. Like this video, share it with friends and family, and let's spread the message of mindful living together. Remember, every day is a gift, and how you choose to live it is what truly matters. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, death smiles at us all. All we can do is smile back. So go forth today, embrace life with open arms, and remember that the gift of existence is yours to cherish.